Support your local theatre and arts industry and enjoy a show at the Shedley. Playford's iconic Shedley Theatre is bringing a great selection of local and national performances to Elizabeth.
For more information on their upcoming shows, visit theshedley.com.au or call 8256 0500.
Did you know your food scraps should go in the green bin or a home compost system? It's better for the environment. It's the right thing to do. And it's easy. Fight food waste by putting all your food scraps, peels and leftovers in the green bin. To find out more, visit playford.sa.gov.au/fightfoodwaste.
Want to know what's happening in the community? Subscribe to our e-newsletter, Playford News, at playford.sa.gov.au and you'll be on top of stories, news and what's happening in Playford. It's local news for local people.
Want to get involved in your community? There are so many benefits in becoming a volunteer at City of Playford, including meeting new people, developing new skills, sharing your talents, improving your employability, as well as enhancing your own mental health and well-being.
If you want to learn more about how to volunteer with us, visit playford.sa.gov.au/volunteers. Feedback about our city's future from our community is really important. It helps us prioritise your needs when planning services, projects and other initiatives.
A convenient way to have your say and stay in the loop on any upcoming consultations is by registering your details on our Engagement Hub website at playford.engagementhub.com.au.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Have you visited the Stratton Centre on Peachy Road, Manapara? Designed to support growth in the city of Playford, the centre offers dedicated workspaces from less than $10 per day. There's also state-of-the-art event and meeting spaces for hire, a complimentary business support service to help you upskill, apply for grants and grow, workshops and networking, as well as training for young kids right through to adults. Plus, the City of Playford Library.
Contact our team for a tour on 8254 4666 or visit the Stratton Centre at 307 Peachy Road, Manapara.
Support your local theatre and arts industry and enjoy a show at the Shedley. Playford's iconic Shedley Theatre is bringing a great selection of local and national performances to Elizabeth.
For more information on their upcoming shows, visit theshedley.com.au or call 8256 0500.
Did you know your food scraps should go in the green bin or a home compost system? It's better for the environment. It's the right thing to do. And it's easy. Fight food waste by putting all your food scraps, peels and leftovers in the green bin. To find out more, visit playford.sa.gov.au/fightfoodwaste.
Want to know what's happening in the community? Subscribe to our e-newsletter, Playford News, at playford.sa.gov.au, and you'll be on top of stories, news and what's happening in Playford. It's local news for local people.
Want to get involved in your community? There are so many benefits in becoming a volunteer at City of Playford, including meeting new people, developing new skills, sharing your talents, improving your employability, as well as enhancing your own mental health and well-being.
If you want to learn more about how to volunteer with us, visit playford.sa.gov.au/volunteers. Feedback about our city's future from our community is really important.
Good evening all, and welcome to this February meeting of the City of Playford Council Assessment Panel. I'll take this opportunity to welcome members, staff, those who have joined us here in the gallery and online this evening. I will just start by reading our acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge that this land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. The City of Playford would also like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I will start just by introducing the members of the panel. To my left, it's Mr Aaron Curtis. To my right, it's Mr Adam Squires. And then just down at the table down there, we have Mr Paul Micken and Councillor Misty Norris. And my name is Jeff Parsons. I'm the presiding member. And we are ably assisted by a number of members of Council's administration that we have with us this evening. So good evening to you all. Now, members, just moving through the agenda. The attendance record, all members are present. There are no apologies. The confirmation of the minutes. Last meeting was held on the 19th of December last year. All members have received a copy of those minutes. Any questions in relation to the production of the minutes? No? In that case, I'm looking for a mover that they be adopted, please. Yes, moving. Paul, thank you. Is there a seconder? Adam, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Applications withdrawn tonight is nil. Declaration of interest. Yes, Misty.
I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on item 6.1, so material conflict due to previous council decisions that have already been made on this allotment. So I will leave the room.
Thank you. We will make sure that's noted in the minutes. Any other interests, members? No? Okay, thank you. So that does bring us to our item for consideration this evening. So, Misty, I'll just give you a moment to exit. Thank you very much. So, members, this is an application for land division, 1 allotment into 4 and tree damaging activity located at lot 144 John Rice Avenue in Elizabeth South in a strategic innovation zone. It was performance assessed and the recommendation is to grant planning and land division consent. Andrew, can I ask if there's anything you'd like to take us through as an introduction to the item, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. A quick summary of the application before the panel. As you know, the City of Playford is the landowner and applicant in this situation, with being assisted by Future Urban. As detailed in this report, the City of Playford has been actively involved in this site since 2011 and has sought to utilise the land for some more strategic purposes. But given the applicant, given council's the landowner and applicant, this application has been presented before the panel for your consideration. As indicated, this application is for a land division 1 into 4. These allotments are ranging from about 4,600 square metres to 1.12 hectares, 4 relatively large allotments. 2 rights of way are proposed that will provide the capacity for the necessary infrastructure and vehicular access. We note that there's been a number of queries provided by panel members in the last couple of days. Council staff have responded to those earlier today, but I anticipate that will probably be a topic of discussion for the panel. It's noted that in order to accommodate the proposed access and service infrastructure, this application also proposes to remove 11 significant trees and 22 regulated trees. This application does not seek to remove the balance of the trees, or the regulated and significant trees that are on the subject land. However, this is to be considered at a later point when future land use applications are submitted and there's a greater understanding of the built form or the extent of the built form and any associated car parking that may be required. We have sought to provide a report that has looked into or identifying clusters of some of the more notable landscaping and significant regulated trees that realistically could be retained as part of future development to indicate that some of those more prominent landmark trees can be retained as part of the future development proposals. DIT was an active participant in this process. They were referred as part of the application due to access points onto John Rice Avenue, and Phillip Highway, both are state-maintained roads. As part of the discussion, DIT has requested a channellised left-turn lane on John Rice Avenue that's to be identified on the planner division. A reserve matter has been proposed in the conditions and reserve matter proposals to ensure that this is undertaken, and DIT in its referral response agreed to that, the reference of a reserve matter. I should add that there are apologies that in the agenda item, for some reason, the 8 conditions of DIT weren't actually in the proposal, but those conditions have been sent to all panel members this afternoon for your consideration. In the gallery tonight, we have 2 members of interest. Eddie Bergerman, who's the project manager of the City of Playford. He's been heavily involved in this project, in particular the contract of sale or sale contract for these 4 allotments, and is able to assist in responding to any queries. And similar, Chris Webber, who's future Urbans consultant, who has been assisting the City of Playford, is also in the gallery. So ultimately, we are able to respond to any questions that you may have tonight. Thank you.
No, thank you for that introduction. Very much appreciated. Members, what I might do, as you just heard, we have a number of people available to respond to questions. Normally we put questions to the applicant first, but in this case we've got a number of representatives for, I guess, different parties involved. So perhaps what I might do is just open it up to general questions, and you might indicate whether you think the applicant's representative or the applicant's best to respond to those. So do you have any questions you'd like to pose to the applicant, their representatives, council at this point? Yes, Paul.
Firstly, one relates to the traffic assessment. I know that the assessment confirms that swept paths can be met in terms of the internal roads, but can you confirm whether each of the allotments is capable of accommodating a turn-in vehicle, a large semi-trailer, for example, or what assessment has been done of the actual suitability of each allotment?
Thank you. The new system. Thank you for that question. Look, the size of these allotments, as I said, they vary from 4,600 to over a hectare. They are, by all means, large allotments. They have been designed to accommodate future uses that would seek to require 19-metre length vehicles. Frank Xiao's assessment has been involved from the early stages as part of the master plan process, from pre-application process, and similarly has been involved through the discussions with DIT, through the more recent discussions in mid-January, I think it was, when those was held. I wasn't involved in those discussions between council and DIT, but I do acknowledge that both the applicant and Eddie were involved in those discussions, and I suppose it's up to the presiding member if you'd be comfortable for someone who was involved in those discussions to assist. So we will. Okay, that one's not working, so I might just... up there.
Good evening, panel members. Yeah, thanks for the query. I think to answer your point, I guess there is a master planning process behind this. As you know, it's quite well documented in the agenda. Frank Xiao was brought in at the very beginning to make sure that the traffic movements do work for the anticipated vehicle types, for the variety of users, allied health, consulting rooms, all of that. It's pretty critical to drive the design of that roadway, as well as those access points. So I guess we wouldn't have gone this far if it didn't work. But I guess semi-trailers, yes, but also medium rigid vehicles and alike, waste trucks, emergency vehicles and alike were definitely considered, yeah, as part of that. Yeah, thanks.
Next question was relating to the, that's all for the traffic, thank you. Relating to the tree protection measures, can you confirm condition 2 of planning consent, is that only intended to relate to the area of the internal road and the easements, not the balance of the allotments? My query is, what is, and I guess it's a question to the staff as well, do we need a condition to ensure protection of the trees that are like in the middle of the proposed allotments, that during the construction of those other works, the trees in the right-of-way, for example, might be protected, the ones that are to be retained, but there's no protection for the other trees and they could be damaged by vehicles. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Sorry, I'm waiting for this microphone. Council's Tree Services Group were heavily engaged through this process. I think I made reference in my report that certainly they're not actively encouraging the removal of large areas of vegetation because of the need to regulate tree canopy loss. It was a condition suggested by the Tree Services Group to mitigate some of the risk should there be any trees within those close proximity to the right-of-way for that infrastructure upgrades. It hasn't been thought to apply to the balance of those allotments or the balance of the area outside of those right-of-ways, but I appreciate that it's a valid point that you've raised, acknowledging that the intention has always been that future applications would address any removal or other tree protection measures depending on the nature of the development that's proposed.
Thank you. Other questions? Aaron.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Question about the stormwater report and specifically the recommendations in relation to stormwater detention and also bunding. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how that those recommendations would be adopted, noting that the Land Division doesn't propose to incorporate those works, and I guess any development proposal on those allotments would be subject to a further stormwater assessment according to the proposal. So I guess I'm interested to hear how the current report that's before us will actually could be implemented, or how it would be implemented through subsequent land use developments.
Thank you. The stormwater management plan prepared by FMG, it is acknowledged that it's a high-level summary. So it's difficult for a stormwater management plan to try and determine the impacts of stormwater when we don't actually know the built form, size and capacity, car parking, the extent of paved areas. It was provided as a context to determine were there any substantial constraints that would require significant mitigation measures to ensure the suitable use of these 4 allotments. Any new application will require an SMP or similar as part of its lodgement to assess how that built form would relate and its surrounding sort of areas of car parking and landscaping to ensure that it meets council's typical stormwater requirements. This stormwater management plan is based on council's typical information and requirements that were provided to FMG, as any new application would require to be based on the similar set of standards. The right-of-ways are contained within each of the proposed allotments. So any future application will need to determine how stormwater can be appropriately managed, and in the conjunction with how the infrastructure areas will be sort of designated. The intention really was to provide, as I said, a high-level summary of what it means. There is a degree of confidence that future applications, collectively as a whole, will manage stormwater when there hasn't been any real significant issues that were flagged as part of this assessment.
Thank you. Further questions, members? Yeah, Adam, thank you.
Thank you. Look, I suppose in regard to the land division, we need to be able to consider whether it's appropriate for its intended use, and I understand all the allotments are of a considerable size. However, given the division and the roads that bisect the site, there's obviously been a conscious decision around the guidance of those allotment sizes. I suppose for the benefit of the panel to reassure that appropriateness question, whether yourself or some of the other members of staff are able to provide some context around what's driven the current proposal.
Thank you. From a planning perspective, I was certainly of the view that these are not small allotments. They are of size and configuration that, in my opinion, are suitable to cater for the intended uses, the range of intended uses. Naturally, the larger allotments will accommodate bigger, more intensive uses that will require additional car parking, access and egress. But prior to it getting to a point of being submitted for consideration, Council's property staff did consult with a range of future purchasers as part of their contractual sort of processes, and to determine if these sites were commercially viable. Was there an interest in the market for allotments of this configuration, given their orientation and access onto state-maintained roads? There was a highest and best use study report prepared in 2021 by Future Urban that also looked into how this related to or it was aligned with the master planning process. And that took to getting some advice from some real estate agents in terms of, do they foresee there being any potential interest in this given the current market? That helped to determine or give a sense of confidence that the allotment sizes were suitable to proceed to this plan of division stage.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? I might ask one then in that case, and mine's kind of an all-encompassing one relating to infrastructure, so bear with me. Hopefully I can get this out appropriately. I guess I just want to understand the applicant's strategy around infrastructure and development and how it comes to be, because I'm really conscious that council's the applicant. They are held to the exact same standard as any other applicant would be. And I think it's important that when we're considering land division, the allotments that are released to market are suitable for their intended purpose and they're provided with the level of infrastructure that would be anticipated. And so I guess I understand the response around stormwater. With the internal roads and access points and how they're proposed to be developed. At the moment, that infrastructure is not proposed, as I understand it, to be put in place prior to the allotments being released to market, subject to, I know we've got another condition now that talks about the access points, which might be able to be spoken to. And if those allotments are sold in a particular order, let's say, does that create a problem in terms of the delivery of those internal, I'll call them driveways for ease of this, because let's say if you had allotment 2 developed or sold initially, can that allotment still, in a fair and equitable way, obtain access to the adjoining road network? How does that interact with lot 1? So it's really I guess what I'm asking is the coordination of infrastructure, and in particular roads, given the answer we've already had around stormwater, how is that proposed to work? And I guess what, guarantee is not the right word, but what security is there to the panel, I guess, in making that decision that that infrastructure will be rolled out and the allotments will be fit for purpose? Sorry, that was a very all-encompassing question, but I'm just trying to get that all out. Thank you.
Thank you. All-encompassing question, but certainly very relevant. It is an interesting application. Typically, a land division of this nature would have a suite of conditions that would relate to the necessary and the necessary provision of infrastructure, sewer, wastewater, power, roads, the list goes on. I'm conscious that in this circumstance we have the City of Playford as a landowner who's in a process of going through a contractual arrangement with 4 future purchasers, where as part of those arrangements there is a requirement as the vendor that council is responsible for the design and implementation or installation of the infrastructure required. There are some nuances in those contract of sales where, for example, Lot 4 on the corner of Mark Road and Coghlan Road is probably one that will go first, so to speak. Given the size of that allotment, there has been some discussions with the future purchaser that they may actually look to initiate that process, but as part of the contract of sale, it'll be prepared in guidance with council in terms of the necessary requirements for managing the infrastructure upgrades. And I mean that in the context, it may result as part of that site's car parking area. So it might be driveways associated with linking quite heavily to its internal car parking areas, which can be a more effective and cost-productive way of managing it rather than 2 separate vendors trying to resolve infrastructure separately. We have proposed a suite of conditions this afternoon to assist with the panel's concerns about how that may assist to mitigate risk. What that sought to do is reference the access points onto John Rice Avenue as a key component, which would need to be done in accordance with the amended plan of division, but also flag that all the necessary drainage, electrical supply, water supply and sewerage shall be installed to relevant recognised engineering practice to the satisfaction of council. So it gives a level of confidence if the panel is of the mind that that is warranted. I'm also conscious that Eddie from Council is here, that should you have any questions about some of the contractual elements, noting that it's not a planning related position, and I certainly have not been involved in those confidential discussions, but should that be on your mind and need clarification, then Eddie is here able to respond to that accordingly.
No, thank you, appreciate that. Right, members, last call for any questions, although we can always, if during our debate other questions arise, we can come back to those. No? All right. In that case, thank you very much for answering the questions. And members, I seek your views in respect of this item. We do have a comprehensive report before us and a recommendation to grant planning and land division consent. It is subject to a number of conditions, and as we've seen today, the addition of the conditions, and also potentially for your consideration is the additional 3 conditions which the applicants very kindly sent out this afternoon. So what are your views in respect of this item? Who would like to go first? Yes, Aaron, thank you.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Look, broadly, I support the land division. It is an appropriate form of development, clearly in the strategic innovation zone. So I have no concerns with the form of development. The size of the allotments, I'm comfortable with. They exceed what the like if you look at equivalent zones in terms of what the appropriate size is for like an employment zone, they exceed them. So I'm comfortable with the sizes. It seems that the applicant has is confident as well that they are appropriate to be developed. There's clearly been a lot of work done to support this land division across the consideration of access, the movement through the allotments, consideration of the trees, the stormwater, the infrastructure. I think the layout seems sensible in relation to the access points, and it's been informed by traffic expert traffic advice, and Commissioner Highways are supportive, subject to those requirements. In terms of just some of the specifics, the trees, yes, there will be some impact of this proposal. I do acknowledge that there are many trees impacted, but I think it seems greater than what would have been the case when this land was rezoned, and the assessment report makes this clear that when the land was rezoned, there wasn't anywhere near the number of regulated significant trees, but because of the amendments to the regulations, there's clearly effect of now having many more regulated significant trees impacted. So I think the proposal, in any way you develop the site, is going to impact on a number of trees, but the report provides a sound basis for how many of them can be retained, and with the view that there will be further assessment of the trees to be retained. In relation to the matter of the infrastructure, I agree there are, with the point of the presiding member, there are some challenges around the provision of infrastructure. And how do we consider this from point of view of it being council, and how do we view that from point of view of, is that any different to any other developer? I think there is a distinction, so I do take a slightly different approach to how, given that the council is heavily involved in this, there will be a level of control over the infrastructure provided. So I do take some comfort from that, and I do see it as a distinction from any other developer, but I equally acknowledge that there still needs to be those checks and balances, that there are appropriate arrangements in place, which broadly I think it is. The other matter I just wanted to touch on, there was mention in the report about the site contamination, which when I view the Practice Direction 14 and Schedule 8, I don't believe the provisions apply simply because this is a land division and it doesn't create a sensitive use. So I take the view that when I interpret Schedule 8 of the regulations, that when you view whether a preliminary site history has to be done, it is because this is a land division, doesn't create a sensitive use. But I think when those next land use applications come forward, it will need to be considered in terms of whether a site history will need to be done, because I take it that the land at the moment doesn't have an assigned use. So when you look at the practice direction, it does contemplate a situation when you have a proposal that goes from an undeveloped or vacant land to then a new land use, and it basically says that you only have to do you don't need to do a site history if, and therefore, i.e. you're not a more sensitive use if the land was industrial or it was for residential purposes. So it's just something to keep in mind. But look, broadly, I support the land division. I do have some comments about a few of the conditions, but maybe we talk to that after. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, I won't repeat what Aaron said about the infrastructure. I'll just comment on the land use and the significant, or the vegetation. The reason I asked about the turning circle for vehicles was just I've come across situations where allotments have been created and then they're determined to be not large enough to accommodate a large rigid vehicle. But I think here I take that the Frank CL would have taken into account the type of vehicles, obviously 19-metre vehicle, that if it meets the swept path for the internal roads, I assume therefore that it's also each allotment would accommodate a turning vehicle as well. Certainly agree that it's in creation of these allotments is not out of character with or the size of them not out of character with what exists in the area. I think it's inevitable that there's going to be significant change. The fact that it's been through quite extensive master planning, and I commend the applicant on the adopted approach and the comprehensive investigations and negotiations. But given the amount of master planning, the fact that community land has been revoked, it's inevitable that there's going to be significant change, and that significant change to the community will be the loss of probably not an inconsiderable amount of vegetation in the long run once each allotment is developed. So I think we can't question that, and we can't go back and undo what's already been done in terms of the decision to sell the land. I'd expect that the highest and best use investigations would have anticipated maximising each allotment, which, if not done carefully, could impact future tree removal as well. I think every attempt has to be taken to protect not only the trees within the that are to be retained in the right-of-way, but as my question before about the condition 2, my concern is that the trees that aren't affected, so to speak, by the internal road construction, there has to be some protection or acknowledgement of them as well. And I'll give you an example that if you turn to page, or attachment 3, it's the tree removal plan. Just an example, tree 48, assuming that that's not covered by that condition 2, it's potentially there could be loads of gravel, for example, dumped immediately adjacent or below that tree. Normally that wouldn't be allowed, or that would be considered potentially a tree damaging activity on a normal development. And so it's unlikely, but it's possible that that could happen. So if staff could maybe think about how that could be addressed. But yes, I think the proposed conditions and the supporting information confirms or assures me that the development is acceptable and should be supported.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, largely echo the thoughts of Aaron and Paul. Look, it is a considered design to a site which council's obviously put a lot of thought in over a long period of time. I do acknowledge that the plans, do result in the loss of a number of trees within the site, and echoing what Paul said, in some ways that was somewhat predetermined or acknowledged as being an outcome through the land revocation process. So when we're talking to the intended use of the site and whether the removal of the trees is justified, I'm fairly comfortable in that situation. The allotment sizes, it was it's reassuring to hear that council have considered in their design making fit for purpose, and I think that they're of a size where it's not going to be seen that they were predetermining the future removal of all the trees from each of those sites. They are of a size where they can be developed and still look to retain where reasonable, acknowledging that's part of a future application, but it is something to turn the mind to. The road network, I think, is quite appropriate with the internals connecting roads. It does allow for the future design to not need to allocate such amount of space for the swept path for the 3-point turns, because they can move in and out in a forward direction, circumventing the site. So that has the potential to either result in additional car parking or reduce the tree removal needs in future. So again, I think that's a fairly considered response. And echo the comments, I suppose, in regard to infrastructure provision with the clearance. I'd be keen to talk through how that might look in terms of the conditions.
Thank you. Look, I have similar views, members, and it sounds as if we're all in agreement generally with the recommendation. I think the intended land use aligns with the zone, and I think the division of land to support those uses is appropriate. I think the answers we've had tonight around the size of the allotments and what went into the creation of allotments that size, together with the background information in the agenda, means that they're suitable. I was satisfied with the answer I received around site contamination, so thank you, together with what's in the report and Aaron's comments tonight. I do think trees are interesting. I think in a way there's almost a tension that you can, by rezoning land for a particular purpose, you almost as part of that, pre-plan in a way for the removal of all of those trees, but it still comes down to a DA process that's subject to particular policy, which is always a difficult tension. But I think, as all members have said and articulated, that really those allotments can't be developed, can't be used for their intended purpose without the removal of some of those trees. And I think the retention, wherever possible, and the future use of those allotments is an important consideration. And I guess with respect to infrastructure, thank you to the applicant staff for putting up with all of my questions. But there's I think the panel as a planning authority has to be satisfied that the allotments do not and are not created without provision being made for the infrastructure necessary to support the future uses. And there's always a balance about who achieves that, who undertakes that work, and making sure that the, use that word again, guarantees are in place to make that happen. And I think while it's maybe an unorthodox approach in a way, I think the potentially the suggested conditions we have before us, the explanations we've had tonight, have given me some assurity that can be delivered. And while there might be infrastructure such as access and water connections and so forth that have to be delivered by future purchasers, I think there are adequate measures in place to make sure that happens and we don't end up with allotments that are not suitable or fit for purpose. So that's some of my thinking. Now we, obviously nearly all members have spoken about some potential amendments to conditions. We obviously have the DIT conditions included, and that's a requirement. In terms of the other conditions, perhaps maybe I'll start with trees and the existing condition 2. Have the administration have an opportunity to think potentially about Paul's comments earlier and what potential changes we might be able to make to capture trees that are not, or do you have any advice around whether the condition is adequate as it currently stands?
Thank you. My reading of condition 2 is such that it does actually address the intent that trees outside of the road corridor are protected when there's protrusions into structural TPZs. I'm also cautious of going beyond the provision of the condition in a way that tree damaging activity is development in its own right, and any person doing such would be subject to those requirements. I've got absolute faith that our tree services team will be involved in this project going forward, and absolutely been looked to protect those trees that are viable. That to the side, because you're an authority that needs to make a determination here, not off the base of it, it's just to trust us. I feel that the condition, as stated, seeks to do that. What came to mind was the removal of power lines through the site. So activities like that, that's generally the intent here, that works not just within the corridor and the easement, ensures those trees are protected.
Yes, I'm satisfied with that response, and I think we can have trust here that it's the council doing the work, and that it'll be managed appropriately.
All right, thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, presiding member. Yeah, my only comment on condition 2 was whether it was just a bit clumsy the way it was expressed, in that it's referring to all other trees, and then it says that are not identified to be removed in brackets and then to be impacted by TPZ. Whether it simply said trees that aren't removed under this development authorisation and that are impacted by TPZ, encroachments, etc. It could just be worded a bit more simply. That was my only comment, because when it introduces this concept of other, I'm then questioning, well, which trees are they? I think the brackets does clarify it, but I think it could be a bit clearer. That was my only thought on that one. The other question I had was just around the 3 additional conditions that have been presented before us. Condition 1 I support. Condition 2 I wasn't clear because it says all necessary and then it goes on to say drainage. So there's a question about then what are we referring to with drainage? Electrical supply, water supply, sewerage services, I think that's clear, shall be installed on the land. So I guess it's just my question around what do you mean by drainage? So I would just query what we mean by that, given that the understanding is the internal roadways and all the infrastructure associated with that and any other stormwater infrastructure would not be installed as part of the land division.
Through the chair, I tend to agree the removal of reference to drainage could be removed, accepting the position that any such drainage would be installed. There is no regional drainage that's required as a part of the land division.
Thank you. So the, oh, sorry, Adam, yes.
Yes, look, thank you. I suppose just a point of clarification on the proposed conditions. There's no reference to the timing of those works, whether the intention is that that's happening prior to clearance. If that's an omission, we can probably pick up the wording from condition 1 of land division consent, or otherwise just want to, I suppose, confirm with the authority if there's any issues in that space.
Intent to the conditions, but was that they're to be addressed prior to the clearance. So absolutely we can make note of that per the existing condition.
All right, members. So what I'm hearing, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that we support the inclusion of the 3 draft conditions that were distributed to us this afternoon, subject to the removal of the reference to drainage in condition 2. It seems I've got that correct. So I might just give the administration a moment to get that in front of us. Just while Matt and Aaron are confirming the wording for condition 2, can I just ask Andrew and Leif, condition 1 in terms of the draft conditions that were presented to us this afternoon refers to access points being installed on John Rice Avenue, Phillip Highway and Mark Road. I'm just wondering if Mark Road should instead be Coghlan Road, because there is no access to Mark Road if I'm looking at the plan correctly. So we might just need, sorry Sky, we might just need to change that. That's all right, yep. For those in the gallery and anyone who's joined us online this evening, just bear with us while we finalise the wording for the conditions. Thank you. All right, members, I think you now have the amended wording in front of you for condition 3, the planning consent condition, and then sorry, should that be condition 2? 3, it is 3, all right, okay. That's fine. Yep, let's say that. So the numbering will be finessed by the staff. So thank you also to the administration for drafting on the run. That's never easy, so I appreciate that. Now, members, are you satisfied with what is now in front of you? There's amended wording for, I'll call it the tree condition, and there's also the inclusion of the 3 conditions that are highlighted in yellow there with the removal of the reference to drainage. And I did note, I was going to mention before, that did have some conditions around drainage as well that probably provides some security also. So unless members have any further changes, and we do have what appears to be a finalised recommendation in front of us. Is anyone prepared to, well, does anyone have any final changes, or is anyone prepared to move that? Aaron, you're moving? Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Paul, thank you. So that becomes the motion, and that is that the application be approved, subject to the reserved matter and all conditions and notes. All those in favour? All those opposed? That is carried unanimously. So thank you, as I said, to the staff for all your assistance in drafting all of those. Thank you to members for your consideration of that item. Now, I understand Misty's departed for the evening, so we won't invite her back in, but we do just have a couple of other administrative items on our agenda to get through. So, as I understand it, there are no appeals or deferred items to discuss. Is there any item of other business from the members? No. Any item of other business from the staff? No. No. Thank you. There are no confidential matters. Is there any item of planning policy any member would like to discuss? No. All right, members, in that case, I'm happy to declare the meeting closed at 6:54 p.m. Thank you for your deliberation on that item. Thanks again for the staff for all your support, and thank you to everyone for putting up with a technologically challenged presiding member getting used to the new microphone system. So thank you. Good evening.
Did you know your food scraps should go in the green bin or a home compost system? It's better for the environment. It's the right thing to do. And it's easy. Fight food waste by putting all your food scraps, peels and leftovers in the green bin. To find out more, visit playford.sa.gov.au/fightfoodwaste.
Want to know what's happening in the community? Subscribe to our e-newsletter, Playford News.